talk about being a slow learner. um, and I really appreciate how Bill often reminds us that we're all slow learners and gives us permission to learn slowly. As I was thinking about this topic, I became curious about the Buddha's past lives, whether you understand those as metaphor or mythology or reality. So I looked up how many past lives the Buddha has had. And it's estimated that he talked about over 500 past lives before he became Shakyamuni Buddha. So I said, well, that's a good start. He was a slow learner too. Got that, 500 lifetimes. And also, along with that little snippet of information, there's one of my favorite stories that I think I've shared before when it came to the holding environment. But this is a lovely story on the topic of patience. The story goes about this monk, Kudapantanka, that he was among the Buddha's Sangha, he and his older brother Mahapantanka. And Kudapantanka, unfortunately, was described as being dull and slow. His memory was poor, and what he learned he soon forgot. And he'd been in the Sangha for a few years and had made little progress on attaining enlightenment. On the other hand, his brother was an agile, quick study learner, and he had soon reached and achieved the deepest levels of concentration. One day, when all the monks were napping in the bamboo grove, Kudapantanka was sitting by himself, sobbing. And the Buddha came by and said, "What's wrong?" And Kudapantanka says, "World's great one, my older brother and I took the vow to become monks at the same time. And my brother's smart and he is close to enlightenment, but I am stupid. I can't even recite one verse. My brother says he's very disappointed and that I should leave the Sangha and stop wasting time. I fear I will not have another opportunity to practice Buddhism in this lifetime. That's why I'm sad. Please, Buddha, help me." And, I can just imagine poor Kuda sitting there feeling distraught and hopeless, while his brother had perhaps not intended to cause him suffering. Maybe he thought he was just being honest and saving him from undue suffering. But his impatience with Kuda's progress had certainly contributed to Kudapantanka's suffering, and even Kudapantanka's own harsh self-criticism, calling himself stupid. Impatience was disconnecting Kuda from the Sangha and from himself. And impatience was disconnecting the Sangha from Kuda and from their own compassion. And I can certainly relate to both Kuda and his brother, as I imagine many of us can. I've been impatient with those who didn't get information down quickly or learn quickly enough and became very judgmental, and I'm sure hurtful. And I've experienced how my impatience can disconnect me from others. With an experience as recently as this morning, but more on that later. I've also been on the receiving end of impatience for not being able to learn something quickly, like how to tie my shoes as a child, how to close out a cash register on my first job, or as an adult, how to use a TV remote control device. So back to our story of Kudapantanka. So the Buddha sees Kudapantanka's distress and responds with patience and compassion, described as caressing Kudapantanka's scalp. saying, "You need not be sad, and neither need you leave the Sangha. Let me give you one simple phrase to recite." And since Kudapanthaka was in charge of cleaning in the Sangha, he says, here's the phrase, just say, "Sweep away the dirt," and chant these 4 words every day. However, being forgetful and a bit slow, Kuda couldn't even remember these 4 words, no matter how hard he tried. So, feeling depressed, he started crying again. So the Buddha, again with great patience and compassion, says, let's try this. Every morning after you shake out the Sangha's clothes and you sweep away the dust, say, "Sweep away." And in the afternoon, when you clean out and throw out the rubbish, say the dirt. This way you can chant as you work and you won't forget the gatha, "Sweep away the dirt." Well, this worked, and Kudapanthaka followed the Buddha's suggestion and kept chanting, "Sweep away the dirt," whenever he was dusting, cleaning, and sweeping the floor. Observing this, the other monks chanted with him and grew compassion and connection within the Sangha. Doing this for over a decade, one morning while the rest of the monks were meditating and Kudapanthaka was cleaning out the living quarters, he kept muttering, "Sweep away the dirt." Just at that moment, the sun shone through the windows on the dust floating in the air, and Kudapanthaka immediately went into the deepest meditation and concentration. When he came out of that state, he suddenly understood it all and said there are 2 types of dust. The dust on the outside can be seen with the naked eye and easy to sweep away. The dust on the inside, that is greed, hatred, and delusion, however, can only be seen by looking into your own mind. If you can't remove the inner dust, you will be perpetually caught up in the cycle of samsara, of suffering. Compassionate Buddha, I now get it. I have swept away my own inner dust. Suddenly, over the top of Kudapanthaka's head, a radiant glow is said to have appeared that shone straight into the depth of his heart. That is how he attained enlightenment. The beauty of being a slow learner, to practice saying 4 simple words for over 10 years, and to allow those words to sink in their own time, straight into the depths of his heart, to become more than just memorized words, to become deep embodied meaning, understood at the deepest levels, encompassing clear seeing of reality as it is. So I was going to end the talk there, but if you'll just bear with me, I'd like to talk a bit about my experience this morning. So this morning I got up very early, of course, to finish my talk, as often happens on the days I'm giving a talk. I was already up in my office on the 2nd floor when my partner calls from downstairs, "Hey, what you doing?" And I thought impatiently, well, what do you think I'm doing? That automatic conditioned thought. "I need to talk to you. It's important," he says. Okay, immediate anxiety and impatience when a loved one says, "I have to talk and it's important." All the stories of what could possibly go wrong with this. And all the thoughts, "I don't have time for this right now. I have something important to do. Can't it wait?" And I didn't, fortunately, say that. All my habitual conditioned responses to stress and anxiety came flooding up. Fortunately, I was working on a talk on patience. So take a deep breath, patience, sweep away the dirt. And so I went downstairs and, being as patient as I could muster, listened as mindfully as I could. And rather than the conflict I feared, he was apologetic, saying he'd woken up in the middle of the night and in his dreams, in his sleep, had written a song or a poem, and he was very hesitant, apologetic, saying it was probably going to sound foolish or corny, but just wanted to share the words before they disappeared, as our night thoughts often do. And it turned into this wonderful sharing at a very deep level, and I appreciated so much that patience allowed this to happen. My patience with my own fears and anxiety, my patience with my partner and what he might be experiencing, that opened the door of compassion and opened the door of his vulnerability. And how, after being a slow learner, it only took me 70 years to be able to access this level of patience in this moment. So grateful for patience in that moment. It may not always work this way, as Lee talked about in her story earlier this week, but so much gratitude to the Buddha and his hundreds of lifetimes and the wisdom that he brought to the world from his patience. And to Kudapantanka and his slow learning and the story of his enlightenment. And so much gratitude to this Sangha for your patience with me as you help me to learn slowly. So thank you so much for your kind patience and attention.